Dr. Efrat, join us on stage. Take all the time you need.
Thank you for being here. Okay. We live in very special times. Times in which we walk in two parallel paths, two parallel realities. In one reality, the fiat reality, we are locked into a system that steals from us via inflation and taxation. This reality is making us weaker, dependent and surveilled with control mechanisms that are reaching new peaks of sophistication. In the other reality, the Bitcoin reality, we are working day and night to build something new. We educate, develop, invest, and put our money where our mouth is. We minimize our dependency on the state and its institutions while practicing sovereignty and responsibility. Most of humanity is walking in the fiat path and is destined to convert to the CBDC path, which I call fiat on steroids. Central bank digital currencies, CBDC, ties the financial freedom of citizens to the government and the banking establishment even further. Take everything that's bad about fiat and add onto it surveillance, more control, more censorship, and enforcement capabilities. A modern prison? Indeed, CBDC is the ultimate prototype of a prison without physical chains. Whether they choose it or not, those on the fiat standard will be migrated to CBDC. But those who have taken the orange pill will join the orange path. But since most of us still live in a fiat standard reality, it's our duty to be aware of where this is going and spread the word as opting out and joining the orange path is the best solution. This is from the new campaign for CBDC in the EU. Notice the positivity.
Imagine a digital single payment solution that could be used for any kind of payment throughout the euro area. Guess what? It could become a reality. A digital euro. Easy, safe, fast, reliable. Digital money from the European Central Bank at your fingertips whenever you need it.
Great, right? Most of society prefers to swallow the convenient, comforting lies rather than check the facts and accept the unpleasant truth. Some say we're heading towards this CBDC future, and others say that it will fail and it won't happen, they won't succeed. I wish I had a crystal ball, but all I have is this presentation and some articles that I write. And by the end of this presentation, I hope you'll be the judge and decide for yourself if CBDC reality is going to happen or not. In the time we have, I'll take you through some countries that I think you should pay attention to if you're interested in this trajectory. So the CBDC system is able to determine expiration dates on the money, the use of a geographical radius, also known as geofencing, program the money to be used on certain things and to forbid others, and totally switch on and off your digital wallet.
Yeah, some people might see it as a darker world where the government decides that units of central bank money can be used to purchase some things, but not other things that it deems less desirable, like, say, ammunition or drugs or pornography or something of the sort. And that is very powerful in terms of the use of a CBDC.
Right. They're telling us that, right? So if we look at a few examples of how they can program our money, for example, if you use too much fuel this month and you went over your allowed quota, you may have polluted the environment too much and your limit will be closed. Have you consumed too much meat this month? Your allowed quota may be limited and you won't be able to buy any more meat. If you protest against the government, God forbid, or share content that is critical of the establishment, you may have your access to your bank account or money completely switched off, like we have seen in the last few years in Canada and Hong Kong, for example. By connecting CBDCs with digital identity and the government systems, such as universal basic income, social credits, carbon credits, and more, we get the ultimate control apparatus. This apparatus will dictate to citizens what they're allowed to purchase, what the permitted quotas are, while limiting consumption according to rules and use cases at program times, places, and cadences. According to the CBDC tracker of the HRF, the Human Rights Foundation, 11 countries have already launched their CBDC. More than 130 countries are in pilot stages, and out of which 36 countries are in very advanced piloting stages. It's just a matter of time until the whole world joins in a lockstep into that reality. So we see a few global trends that expedite the rollout of CBDCs. Number one is strengthening of the BRICS bloc, de-dollarization. You probably heard of that trend. Number two, closing banks and closing bank accounts of dissidents for many reasons. 3, reducing cash and privacy. 4, governments want to hold on to their money monopoly with CBDC, and for them, crypto and Bitcoin are a threat. So, for example, China and Nigeria banned cryptocurrencies just as their CBDCs were launched. And India announced CBDC plan and banned crypto at the same time. Let's take a look at Thailand. In 2023, Thailand launched a pilot where people received free money, basically were bribed with $280, which is about 10,000 baht, a lot of money for the average Thai, with an expiry date of 6 months on the money and a geofence of 4 kilometers radius where they can spend the money. Based on this recent success, and yes, they call it a success, Thailand will launch at the end of 2024 a digital token payout to 50 million lower income earners. 50 million people will participate, aimed at encouraging them to spend in their local communities. It's a 500 billion baht, which is 13.7 billion US dollar plan of creating money out of nothing. The sad and funny thing is that they wanted to take the 500 billion baht as debt, and they got criticized. So what did they do? They announced it will be taken from the fiscal policy instead, meaning fresh printing of money, meaning more inflation, meaning they steal from you anyway, right? And now everyone's happy, so they managed to pass that through the law. Using CBDC like this for stimulus achieved by airdropping or bribing, if we call it by its real name, will be used as an excuse to continue printing money, just like Thailand shows us now. Continue printing fiat money, basically. Enbridge project, a BIS-led CBDC project for cross-border payments, is in the works for a while now, and last month, Thailand and China announced a partnership and did some PR around promoting this topic of cross-border payments. In Enbridge, a lot of different countries from the BRICS bloc are participating. China spent a couple of years rolling out a relatively failed CBDC project without widespread adoption, while injecting 30 million yuan as free money, again, bribing, to encourage user adoption. I call it airdrop, right? Like in shitcoinery. Alipay and WeChat are the biggest competition and the reason that it didn't take off. So take a look at the top of the graph, how much of a market share Alipay and WeChat have, and that's the reason why the CBDC could not compete with them. People didn't want to leave Alipay and WeChat. However, recently, WeChat and Alipay have announced, by the way, they have traffic of about $4 trillion a year. They announced that they're integrating the digital yuan into their apps, which can be the beginning of a wide adoption and scale. So if you can't beat them, join them. That's exactly the strategy here. At the same time, an interesting point is that the Chinese people who are receiving their salary in digital yuan are immediately converting it to fiat yuan, to real yuan, to cash normally. They don't want to hold on to the CBDC. So I'm not so sure that China is actually failing with its CBDC. We've seen recently that Hong Kong starts accepting the digital yuan, as you can see in the article of Bloomberg on the left. This is from a couple of weeks ago. And more players are joining the mBridge CBDC project, which I showed you before. Israel, where I come from, Israel is very advanced in its activities to develop and be ready to launch its CBDC, also called the digital shekel. Several pilots already deemed successful. These are all pilot projects successfully completed in Israel. By analyzing the Bank of Israel's documents, I gained many insights into how they work and what they're going to do when they launch the CBDC. So they intend to roll out CBDC first to government payments, taxations, fines, allowances, then public sector employees' salaries, then business payments, whether it's physical or e-commerce, and so on. Basically, they want minimum friction for end users. Hence, they suggest seamless back-end replacement. Rather than putting it in the front end, they're going to replace the back end, keeping all existing payment methods in place. Your credit card, your wearables, your payment apps. A bit similar to the China with Alipay and WeChat that we've seen, right? They're integrating themselves into what's already existing. An interesting use case example from one of Israel's latest hackathons reveals the disabling and freezing of wallets. How convenient to use a parental control use case for freezing wallets, while in reality it can be used for any wallet, anytime the state or the government or the bank decides to do so, right? And this was like 2 weeks ago they announced this. The architecture design, this is very interesting because I believe most countries will follow this architecture. So the architecture design reveals how the Bank of Israel will implement CBDCs in a two-tier system. Central banks will act as the CBDC issuer, lending CBDC to financial institutions in the same way fiat is created and lent today. And payment service providers will be the ones to implement, manage, and transact with the end users, and then settle with the central banks, okay? Because the central banks don't have the capacity to do it themselves. They're not B2C organizations. The European Union, going back to them, launched a marketing campaign to promote the digital euro 6 months ago to start educating the European public about a reality where they will be obliged to use supervised CBDCs. Christine Lagarde, the head of the ECB, kicked off the propaganda to instill in the public the obvious narratives. It's easy, it's safe, it's fast, it's free, it's reliable. In terms of timeline, the development and rollout phase will start at the end of 2025.
The digital euro is on the move. Yesterday, the Governing Council of the ECB approved the opening of the preparation phase. It will be a journey, and we will walk the journey together with the legislator. All European institutions will be involved to make sure that Europe is equipped with the currency of the future.
Great. Lagarde emphasizes another point. The digital euro will not be anonymous. It will have some privacy, but not anonymity. This point is critical. The state or government or banks, they rely on identification. It is the key for surveillance and control. KYC is critical to exercise law enforcement or regulations through technological restrictions. So how can you have privacy with zero options for anonymity? I'm not sure. Have you wondered what the BRICS nations are doing about CBDCs? Well, obviously, don't worry. They're also working on their own implementations, country by country, but also working on the mBridge project, which I mentioned before, together so that they can do cross borders between each other. They're also working on what's called BRICS Pay. BRICS Pay is a CBDC platform to unify trade and payments between BRICS nations. Okay, moving on to Nigeria. The first African nation to launch a CBDC, the e-Naira has been around for 3 years, and it didn't exactly succeed. The citizens took to the streets to protest those changes in cash and resented the introduction of an unneeded digital solution while demanding the return of cash. After a few weeks of protests, cash was returned alongside the e-Naira, which was not cancelled and became part of reality. The bright side of this, many Nigerians chose the orange Bitcoin path during this time. A new IMF report notes that the e-Naira has to date accounted for only about $20 million worth of transactions, which is very low. Only 13 million e-Naira wallets have been created out of a total population of 226 million. And most of these wallets are inactive. A new stablecoin is also being developed in Nigeria, which is another important trend to watch. The CNGN is a stablecoin to be backed by the biggest banks and used mostly for cross-border payments. Some claim that it has more potential to succeed than the e-Naira, and I think we're going to see more stablecoins alongside CBDCs in many different countries. So that's another trend to be aware of and pay attention to. Australia is going cashless pretty heavily and pretty quickly, and now with the digital identity bill that have just passed, the pieces of the puzzle are coming together. These are all prerequisites for CBDC, so keep an eye out on Australia. Oh, next up on our suspect list is not a state, but rather a crypto company, or should I say, the biggest shitcoin company. Ripple is in talks with about 20 governments and central banks to develop their CBDCs using their platform dedicated to issue CBDCs and stablecoins. They already partnered with 6 governments and central banks for CBDC pilot projects. Ripple's claim for fame is the combination of speed, efficiency, a sustainable and green blockchain, new network that uses little energy compared to Bitcoin.
I often get asked the question, what's the most exciting thing about CBDCs and stablecoins? In one word, innovation. My name is James Wallace and I head up CBDC at Ripple. You might already know that over 90% of central banks around the world are now exploring CBDCs. There are many drivers for CBDC, including the decline of cash, improving payments efficiency, lowering costs, and the desire to innovate the ways in which money is used. Ripple's CBDC platform is your one-stop shop for the creation of digital currency, designed for minting, managing, transacting, and redeeming CBDCs and stablecoins.
Sorry if I made you nauseous so far, but this is reality. Okay, but I'm an optimist, so let's take a look at some of the good news. And there are some good news. It's not all doom and gloom. Germany's central bank latest document shows that at least they're aware of the public outrage that can come about. They admit excessive surveillance. They actually, oh, I didn't click. Oh, sorry. They admit excessive surveillance. This is from their latest document. And that their decisions are extremely sensitive and can hurt the trust of citizens. So they're aware. This guy from the Israeli central bank is so threatened that he has to revert to FUD and shaming of Bitcoin. The digital shekel will not be developed by some unknown Satoshi Nakamoto. The central bank we all know and trust will be behind your CBDC, right? So don't you worry. Not that I believe politicians, but in the US, Florida governor, South Dakota governor, US presidency candidate RFK Jr., and also Trump all show objections to CBDC. Trump even said last week that Bitcoin mining may be our last line of defense against a CBDC. And even if he doesn't deliver, the fact that he said it, people start to wake up. Last month, the House passed a bill that will ban CBDC in the US on the federal level, if finally approved. Let's see the Republican Senator Tom Emmer.
That's why I reintroduced a bill yesterday called the Central Bank Digital Currency Anti-Surveillance State Act, which puts a check on unelected bureaucrats and ensures that the United States digital currency policy upholds our values of privacy, individual sovereignty, and free market competitiveness.
Right. The UK saw a strong public backlash to Prime Minister Sunak last year, with 50,000 responses sent to the Bank of England following a public hearing on the digital pound, aka the UK's national CBDC. So if we have any Brits in the audience, well done for that. Yeah, good. El Salvador is clearly showing another possible way to develop a country's financial future which is not based on CBDC. Remember that. As Ayn Rand said, we can ignore reality, but we cannot ignore the consequences of ignoring reality. We have become way too accustomed to the government taking away our freedoms and returning it to us on its own terms. If we just let the frogs sit there, they'll boil to death. And we'll have a new CBDC dark path ahead of us. We have the possibility of showing people this dark CBDC path and offer them the orange path instead. So these are a couple of slides that I have prepared. Yeah, that's the time to take out your phones and take photos. You can use that with people that want to see what the difference is between CBDC and Bitcoin. Okay, I think it's our responsibility to show them. I'm going to put that on my Twitter after the conference as well, and I put together 12 points that compare Bitcoin and CBDC. So just like we're being censored and our freedom of speech is violated these days, with CBDCs we'll be financially censored and our freedom to transact will be violated. Look at that.
A euro will always be a euro.
No, that's a lie. We know that's not true. However, one Bitcoin will always be one Bitcoin. So, we either surrender to this dark, crazy CBDC reality, or we jump over to the new orange path and offer those who choose to join an option to do so. Be kind. Help them on board to a brighter reality. Thank you. Oh, and here you can find me with the barcode and everything.